Hi everyone, welcome to another video. Today I want to share with you this die cut scene that I made with the Kat Scrappiness new He Is Risen die set. But before I do that, I want to remind you to follow me across social media if you haven't already. Those links are in the description box below. Also, you can subscribe to my channel, and if you enjoy this video, the thumbs up button always helps. For my card today, I am using the new He Is Risen die set from Kat Scrappiness. I'm going to have all the supplies that I'm using listed and linked down in the description box below. So if you have any questions or if you're wondering about what I'm using, you can always head down there and find those links. To start off with, I'm going to be doing my die cutting. I'm doing all of my die cutting from white cardstock. This is one of my favorite tricks to make die cut scenes really quick. I like to die cut all of my pieces from white cardstock, however many I'm going to need, and then I can color them later on. Whatever color I want to, whatever color of inks I have, I can mix and match and do that instead of kind of paper piecing with cardstock or die cutting a bunch of different pieces of colors of cardstock. It really is just sometimes easier to go ahead, die cut them all from white, and then you can color them in as you want to. For my coloring today, I'm using distress inks. This is one of my favorite ways to color in my die cuts. But there are so many different ways you can color them in. So you can use your Copic markers or your alcohol markers. You can use watercolors. You can use distress inks. If you have any other kind of dye inks or pigment inks, that will work too. I'm just using my distress inks today, and I'm using my mini ink blending tool to go ahead and sponge on that color. If you don't have a mini ink blending tool, you can always use a makeup sponge as well. Or finger daubers work really great for this too. I went ahead and used some masking tape to just tape off the bottom of those crosses so I could use my vintage photo just on the crosses themselves. I didn't want the ground to be covered with any of that brown. I set that aside for just a minute to kind of let that ink settle into the paper. And then I'm using peeled paint distress ink to go ahead and color in my grass border. I'm not worrying about the edges so much because I will be using this just on 4¼ inches, so it's not going to be the entire length of that. So I just left the ends of that white. Once I had that done, I went ahead and went back to my little crosses, removed the painter's tape that I had been using to mask, and I'm just going to switch that up and mask off the bottoms of the crosses now, so I'm coloring on just the bottom hill. To color in that hill, I'm using some Mowed Lawn Distress ink, and again, just using my mini ink blending tool to pounce on that color. Now, once I had that done, I could go ahead and remove my painter's tape, and I'm going to have this great two-toned die cut that took hardly any effort at all. I didn't have to do any paper piecing, gluing, anything like that. Super simple. For my next panel, this is going to be the sky background, so I'm using some Mermaid Lagoon Distress ink, and I switched up to my makeup blending brushes just because I find these easier to get a softer blend, which is what I'm going for with the sky. I like to start at one end of my panel and work my way up, so I go from darkest to lightest, kind of like an ombre, but just with one ink. Once I got to a certain point, I did go ahead and pull out an extra piece of cardstock to hold this in place, just because with distress inks, you can kind of mess it up with the oils on your fingers. I wanted some separation between the die cut scene and the card base. So I'm using the stitched zigzag border die set from Kat Scrappiness, and I die cut that from some craft cardstock. I die cut mine slightly longer than what I'm going to need it, so I can position it, center it, and then just trim off the edges, which I'll show you how I did. But first I need to go ahead and put that scene together. I am using that panel that I did my ink blending on, and I'm just going to start layering up. You can use liquid glue, you can use dry adhesive, it really is up to you. With liquid glue, you're going to have a little bit of playtime to move things around like I'm doing here with these clouds. And with the dry adhesive, you're going to place it down and it's going to stick where you stick it. So just keep that in mind as you're placing things around. I placed the grass border die down on the very bottom. I used some dry adhesive for that. Then for the clouds, I'm using a liquid adhesive, and I'm placing those down on the scene flat again as well. Whenever I place these down with liquid adhesive or any die cut with liquid adhesive, I like to go ahead and put something heavy like an acrylic block over the top to hold it in place while it dries. That way it's just not going to move around on me. Once that was down, I went ahead and put some foam tape on the back of the crosses, and I'm going to go ahead and place those on the bottom. That's going to just lift them up, give them the slightest bit of dimension so they kind of stand away from that background. They look like they're in the front of the scene. That is the scene all done. The only thing that was left to do was add that little bit of border. So like I said, I wanted to add that border to create some separation between that scene and the card base. So I die cut that, and I'm just going to go ahead and center up that panel right over the top of the border. The border is going to hang out from both sides, so I just take some scissors and cut it flush with the panel itself. This is so much easier for me than to try and get it exactly the same size as what I cut the panel. Even though I know it's 4 1/4, still the slightest little bit can look odd when you're doing borders. So I added some more double-sided adhesive to the back of that panel, and I placed it down on the card base. I'm going to dress up this card with the jewels from Kat Scrappiness. Here's a look at the entire color variety that you can get. I'm using the clear ones today, but I love all of those colors. They are gorgeous. These come in 4 different sizes in the pack. You have a very large one, then you have 2 medium ones that are slightly different, and then a smaller one. They have a nice flat back on them, so they lay down really nicely, and they secure well with any liquid adhesive. I'm placing down several of the clear ones, just kind of dressing up the outside, drawing your eye towards that scene. I added a blessing sentiment along that border to finish off the card, and that was it. I absolutely love the way this turned out. It was super easy and took no time at all. I hope you guys enjoyed this video and this final look at the card, but that is going to do it for me today. There are going to be links on the left side of your screen you can click on. You can also subscribe to my channel over there if you haven't already. Don't forget all the information down in the description box. Thanks for watching and happy crafting.